Committee, Donor, please join us for pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. First thing on the agenda is the report of the town manager. Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Mayor Black, members of council. I wanted to start off by extending congratulations to Mary Zirkle, the Redevelopment and Housing Authority, the development team, and everyone else associated with the town's award of a $921,000 CDBG grant that will be used to rehabilitate housing within the town limits. In our administrative note, I'd like to note that between now and the next regular meeting of council, there are two important holiday-related dates that I want to bring everyone's attention. The annual community fireworks display, sponsored by the town and the county, will commence at dusk on the evening of Saturday, July 3rd, and town offices will be closed on Monday, July 5th, in observance of the National Independence holiday. And I would like to close my report by making a statement that will be echoed shortly, I'm sure. And just want to recognize and thank my good friend Will Berry for his service and many accomplishments during his 37-year tenure as city and in-town attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Warner? No? All right. Next, we have appearances before council. A couple of these, we'll call these during the public hearing. Everybody signed up for the Governor's Hill, and then Ms. Crawford. And so we have one appearance before council, Carrie Hardwick.
Oh, I'm the other one speaking?
For right now, yes.
Hi, I'm Carrie Hartwick. And Will, I want to thank you for everything you've done for this town and for my son and for myself. I thank you. You enjoy your retirement. And go on vacation now. Don't wait until the fall. You deserve to.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we prepared a resolution, Will, and I just need a consensus of everybody in council. So if we just have consensus to present this resolution to Mr. Berry tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and read the resolution. Resolution of the town of Bedford honoring Will Berry for his contribution to the town. Whereas William W. Berry IV has served Bedford with distinction as first city and town attorney since 1984. And whereas Mr. Berry acquired valuable professional experience and knowledge prior to his employment in Bedford, where he chose to practice for the direct benefit of his hometown. And whereas throughout his tenure, Mr. Berry was a leader in efforts to preserve historic properties, contributing to the character of the community, such as the Wharton property, in a manner that promotes their ongoing vitality and function. Whereas Mr. Berry has consistently acted as a promoter and conduit for several innovative best practices, including Bedford's early development and implementation of digital cable infrastructure. And whereas Mr. Berry was instrumental in the development, negotiation, and implementation of Bedford's change in constitutional status from a city to a town. And whereas Mr. Berry has been an active member of the community in numerous leadership roles with various civic groups, as well as his active membership in Main Street United Methodist Church. And whereas Mr. Berry has been industrious and diligent in his steadfast professional guidance and service to the community. And whereas the members of Bedford Town Council and its staff, past and present, who have served in Mr. Berry's company, wish to express their deep respect and pleasure at having an opportunity to serve and work with Mr. Berry. And whereas Mr. Berry is considered to be a gentleman of unique character and dignity, who leaves a legacy of professionalism and decorum. And now therefore be it resolved that the town of Bedford adopts this resolution in honor of William W. Berry IV, this 22nd day of June 2021. Likewise, the council calls upon all citizens of the town of Bedford to honor and thank Mr. Berry and his family for their tremendous effort and sacrifice toward the well-being of the entire community. May God bless him and his family in their future endeavors. Mr. Berry, I'll present this resolution to you, as well as a token of our appreciation for the many years of service to the town of Bedford. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, I just thank you and each member of council and all those members of council that I've worked with over the years. I've been pleased to work with a group of people who they may not agree on everything, but they all have apparently and very obviously agreed that they want this to be the world's best little team. Thank you.
So we'll start with council comments. Mr. Stanley, we'll start at your end.
I just want to say, Will, it's been an honor and a pleasure working with you, and it's been fun at times also. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. I'll be still seeing you quite often, I'm sure.
Thank you, Will, for everything you've done, advice and stuff that you helped me with over the years, so I appreciate everything you've done and for the town of Bedford.
Well, I was here last night, and I never called you Huck because I knew you hated that name. But they used to rather freely last night. But I remember when you came here, I started the sheriff's office when you came back to Virginia Beach. It was you, and Johnny Overstreet, and Phil Wallace, and a bunch of them over in your dad's office building. And you're still there. The rest of them have moved on and moved out. But good work, and I talked to you a year ago, and I said you need to enjoy life. Now you will.
Thank you, Steve.
I have to say that I've known Will since Sarah and I came to town, and he's been just a wonderful asset to the community. I've dealt with him several times in various projects around town, and he's always given him his time, he and Libby both, to a lot of projects, and appreciate him greatly. I hope we won't sadly be missing you from those projects. Just give you more time now that you're not doing this. So, good luck.
Will, I want to start off by thanking you for your many years of service and hard work and dedication to the town of Bedford. I also want to thank you for kind of helping me out once I got elected to the council, kind of mentoring me a little bit. And more importantly, I want to thank you for being a good friend. Thank you for everything you do. Now that you're retiring, it's time to go on vacation, enjoy life, live the good life. You've earned it.
My wife must have talked to you.
Mr. Berry, like everyone, I appreciate your dedication and your service to this community. It's been your lifelong work, and through all of the many good things that have happened over the years, you've put your thumbprint on that, and provided us with sound legal advice when we needed it, and counsel as well. I mean, I know in my 6.5 years here on council, I've reached out to you for your opinion on a lot of matters, and I will definitely miss those conversations. We definitely wish you the best. Enjoy your retirement, and I know where you're at on College Street, so I'll find you when I need you.
Thank you.
One last comment I would like to make. I attended a meeting with Todd and the police department as part of the National Night Out last week, and on July, make sure I get this right, Todd, on July 10th at 10 o'clock, the police department is doing a community service project. They are going to start at 10 o'clock at Edmund Street Park and do some maintenance work and over there, and then around lunchtime we'll head over to Greenwood Park. So any of you council members that feel like putting your work shoes on and come out and help our police department, we'd be happy to see you, or anybody else in the community. This is another good thing that our police department is doing, reaching out to the community, and we appreciate that. All right, the next thing is we'll start the public hearing process. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Report of council committees. We did have a couple committee meetings tonight with electric.
Had an electric committee meeting at 6 o'clock. The Bedford Memorial Hospital is having a service upgrade. They are currently being served by 7 transformers at the location, and they're saying they can be served by 2 independent circuits with manual switching, 2 independent transformers, each at 3,000 kVA. So we're currently in the process of figuring out the cost estimate, time frame, and what we can do and not do. And as I always say, more to come.
Thanks, CD.
Property committee had a closed session meeting regarding the possible acquisition of property.
That was on the committee meeting since last meeting. All right, one little revision to the agenda. At the very end, we just need to add a quick closed session for personnel, unfortunately, to discuss the attorney hiring process. So anyway, with that, we'll start the public hearings. The first one is permitting an office and parking area by conditional use permit in PRD TNO zoning district. Mr. Warner, would we?
Yes, I read the notice, which is hereby given of a public hearing to be held by Town Council at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, June 22nd, for the purpose of hearing consideration of a request for a conditional use permit for an office building with additional parking located at 706 Burks Hill Road in the town of Bedford, on a property consisting of 2.719 acres. The property is zoned planned residential development with the traditional neighborhood overlay applied and is owned by Sue N. Croft, and the applicant is Sue N. Croft. Information has been on file in the Office of Planning and Community Development, and at this time, anyone who is in favor of or opposed to the request is invited to step up and express his or her views.
All right, so with that, we'll open the public hearing. Ms. Croft, did you want to make some comments?
I'd like to thank all of you for this consideration, but my little business has grown quite a bit. And as one gentleman told me today, don't minimize your business, Sue, because I have grown a lot and have quite a status in the insurance community. So I have been granted a new opportunity to be an MGA, and that's the top level of recruitment of offices. So I'm going to be recruiting 19 states for FMOs or SGAs to sell the Medicare Medical Savings Account. And right at this point, there's only one in the entire United States. So I think it's quite an honor for us to have that going here in Bedford. But the reason I needed the extra office space is a couple of clerical people and a couple of agents, you know, wherever I might can put them. And the people that will be working under me are actually going to be located in these 19 states. You know, they'll be having their agents, and we may be training them, but it would be virtual training and stuff like that. So we won't have any extra traffic going in and out of our way there. You know, we just needed some more office space. We've expanded as much as we can. And even I don't like the stairs, you know. Most of the seniors don't like those stairs, so we thought we'd try to go into the back there. So I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this matter? If not, we'll close the public hearing. All right. The next item is the public hearing permitting a multifamily residential development and R3 single-family development standards by conditional use permit in a PRD zoning district. Real quick, before you read that notice, Bart, I know we got a lot of people that are here tonight that want to speak on this matter. We ask that you kind of limit your time to 3 minutes if you can for us, just give everybody an opportunity to speak and be heard tonight, so we appreciate that. Mr. Warner, if you want to read the notice on.
Certainly. Notice is hereby given of a public hearing to be held by Town Council at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021, for the purpose of hearing consideration of a request for a conditional use permit for a multifamily development and a request for R3 residential lot area, width, coverage, and frontage for single-family lots located at the end of Crest Ridge Drive within the town of Bedford, tax parcels 251-A-1-T and 251-A-2-T, consisting of 44.25 acres. The request is for 143 multifamily and 70 single-family units. The property is zoned planned residential development and is owned by Rambo-Ellen LLC. The applicant is White Engineering and Design. Information has been on file in the Office of Planning and Community Development, and tonight anyone who is in favor of or opposed to the request now has an opportunity to express his or her views.
All right, with that, we'll open the public hearing. We've got some people signed up. First, I would like to ask Mr. Jamie White to come up on behalf of the developer and give us his thoughts on the matter.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, member of council. My name is Jamie White, White Engineering Design. We were here before you earlier this year, and we went through some stuff towards the end of last year to try to get a conditional use permit on these two parcels. We went through that process at that time doing 100% multifamily on that lot, where there's two combined lots. We got feedback from that and tried to make accommodations where we could, and looked at some alternatives for secondary access. I know that was a big issue. Ultimately, we were denied earlier this year, and we were moving forward with a by right development to do R1, which would be allowed for us. To get to that point to where we were starting that process of that design, our first order of business was to get some tree clearing done and to start picking up topography so that we could start the first phase of our improvement design in that to do R1 development. When we had the surveyor go out there and stake the property boundary between us and the neighboring parcels on Emerald Crest Drive and Emerald View Court, so we could make sure that there was a real tight backyard. We wanted to make sure that we weren't cutting any trees that did not belong to us. Those stakes ended up being very close to those houses and really kind of spurred some additional conversations with the developer as we were moving forward, because these stakes were placed in areas that were splitting patios and swing sets and things like that, that those people that live in that area thought or were using at least as their yard. And the developer had been out there on site, and I think some of those people in the neighborhood had reached out to him to see if there was anything that could be done to help mitigate any type of disturbance to their way of life that they already were having with their rear yards now, and having some level of privacy and some screening comfort from anything that goes on. That's what brought us back to this point that where we are now. Obviously, we were moving forward after our denial earlier this year, and we are bringing a new request at some of the conversations, kind of at the request of some of the other folks that live there, to see what options we have. Looking at some of the comments that we received last time, I know one of the issues of contention were we were doing strictly multifamily. It wasn't a multi-use residential, multi-type residential. So what we did was look at an alternate plan for the development and try to do something that kind of matched the existing neighborhood. So that's why we came up with doing the patio home styles and portions of this, and look at doing single-family detached homes, which would be an R3 category home, which would be very similar to what's already was in phase 1 of Governor's Hill. And that, what we were looking at was keeping single-family detached on the lower side of the property. On the upper high side of that property, we were going to do patio homes very similar to what that existing neighborhood is now. Right now, if you look at Crest Ridge Drive, most of those are single-family homes, and even coming up Emerald Crest Drive, that's all single-family. So pretty much in that band and elevation across our project, we're looking to keep single-family detached homes in that area. Up on the upper end of the project, that was part of Phase 2, that was multifamily patio homes, and on the upper side of our development, we're trying to do the similar thing. These are going to be very similar style houses, very similar in size to what's already out there. So what we're providing as a new option for our development is, in essence, extending the existing neighborhood in a similar style to what is already out there. When we brought this thing back before you originally, the biggest issue that came up was traffic, and all the traffic that was pouring out potentially onto the neighborhood. We went through a number of iterations of looking at options there. There were no feasible options for a secondary connection. When we were looking at doing a by right R1 development in the PRD, obviously, you know, we're going to be looking at saving costs. We were going to isolate it to one full access entrance that would be at Crest Ridge Drive. All the traffic would be pouring in and out of that one location, which, in my professional opinion, is not the ideal solution. If you're going to have that much traffic, it would be better to spread it at multiple connection points, which is kind of what we had originally planned to do by connecting near the cul-de-sac on Emerald View Court. So what we're asking for today is to relook at our development as a mixed residential. We're looking to still have 2 connection points to the adjoining neighborhood. And we, after the Planning Commission meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago, we did get some feedback from Planning Commission, and the developer put some boots on the ground and started knocking on doors to the residents that are out there, especially some of those residents that brought up some of those concerns that were on those adjoining properties originally. And what we had done was come up with an option to shield or buffer in a permanent way that would benefit those adjoining neighbors. And what we did was look at taking 40-foot minimum off the backs of those homes along Emerald Crest Drive and isolating that area as area that would not be disturbed by our development. And along Emerald View Court, especially some of those homes that are like at that peak corner, if you see the map there, some of those yards got really, really small in the back. And some of those yards, what we are looking to give is much more than 40 feet, but it's an even line across the back sides of those just to make an even cutoff that makes sense. So what we have, and we submitted by email to the town, we have 11 agreements signed in support of our development. And our condition with them is that we would build in accordance to what we have on our plan, and that what we would give to them is deed them over additional property that would become theirs to own. So on our plan, that our last submittal, it shows a hatched area that is in the rear. Those hatched areas indicate the amount of area that would be deeded over to those existing property owners. We have stars that are on that last plan that was submitted. Those are all the homes that we have agreements with, that if we get approval of the conditional use permit, that within 60 days of today's date, or whatever date, if we get approval, we would, at the developer's expense, we would go through getting plats adjustments and whatever recordation needs to happen to transfer that property over to those individuals along Emerald Crest Drive and Emerald View Court. Now, there's also one adjoining house down in the bottom at Crest Ridge Drive. I believe that's 1200 Crest Ridge Drive. We can't give them 40 feet, and that's a side yard there. We indicated an additional 20 foot of side yard. That home already was going to be near where we are potentially looking for our stormwater management pond. our stormwater management pond by regulation has to be 40 foot off of the property, 20 foot off the property line anyway. So if we give them 20 feet, then we'd already have to have our pond another 20 feet away from that. In essence, that's a 40-foot buffer that would have to be provided. So that was our reach out to the community, and I think we've got good support from the adjoining neighbors that are there anyway. And I think and originally we were showing landscape buffers and things like that between, in discussions that the developer had with those lot owners. I think people would prefer to have the option to do what they wanted to. So if this land is deeded over to them, if they want an extra 40 feet of backyard so they can fence in and their kids can play in, if they want to leave it wooded to keep it buffered, or if they want to add existing trees, that would be entirely up to them to do whatever they want with that land because it would belong to them. Unfortunately, there was, some of the homes have adequate backyards. There was one home at 1300 Emerald View Court that is in a kind of a wedge, and the rear yard comes to the rear, and there was just nothing we could offer at that point. So we didn't even try to reach out to them with an agreement per se, but obviously I think a lot of our neighbors would be very happy to have the extension of their rear yard and have some level of control over either buffering or additional space. Also, by going to this multi-family and having some open space and things like that, we won't need to clear cut the entire property. We'll do select cutting and keep open space areas, keeping good, mature woods and stuff like that, and we're not looking just to go in and strip this whole thing down and having it wide open spaces as well. There was a discussion that we had early on, and we had some trouble getting some meetings scheduled with BRWA, but I did have a nice hour and a half meeting with BRWA yesterday to talk about sewer capacities and things like that. They don't feel there's any issues at all with water capacity. There's no problem there. BRWA did mention that there were some potential hot spots with sewer capacity, whether that be roots in lines, failing lines, flat lines, undersized lines, and things of that nature. And in our conversation, what our objective was is that after this meeting, if we can get approval, our part of us would be to survey the BRW, the public sewer that's leaving there and following our route, so that information can be submitted to BRWA for them to insert into their consultants' water and sewer models. We'll locate hot spots that may need to be checked, and we will provide some level of flow monitoring to see what lines may have some issues there. And in working with BRWA, they are willing to work with us on target hot spots, but the developer will maybe front those costs to get those repairs done, and that would obviously be a benefit for any overflow issues that may have been happening in the past. And then they would provide us some level of credits for connectivity fees and things of that nature moving forward. So there are some potential spots that we'll have to work with. So what I would like to say is that our plan is 213 units max. Okay, but we've got kind of whatever our ratio is there. Obviously, any development would need to have a sewer capacity check. If you get over like 10 units, they're going to want to know what our sewer capacities are. We have to do that analysis downstream anyway. So our max is looking at 213. If we have issues with BRWA, or if we have to do long-term planning and stage development in phases to coincide with improvements downstream, we're definitely not going to do anything that's going to overburden the existing system that is out there as well. And keep in mind that this is a multi-year project. This isn't something that's going to be coming in. We're going to have 213 units popping in the next 2 years. This is a several-year project that we will work with BRWA to make sure all those lines and stuff that are serving the community will be adequate as we proceed with the development. And if there's any questions that you have, I'll be happy to answer them.
We'll wait. Yeah, we'll wait. Sure. All right. Let's see. The first person is Susan
That's all right. It's a hard name. Hello, my name's Suzanne Schieffer. I live at 1300 Emerald View Court. I'm on that corner lot that kind of comes to a weird point in the back that, you know, there really wasn't any way they could offer me anything, and I understand that. That's not an argument. I know that that lot is kind of weirdly spaced. I'm here tonight just to represent a lot of the people from the court up there as one speaker so that not everyone has to come up. And while we do certainly really appreciate what the developers have been able to do as far as offering land to folks who live up there and offering some of that buffer, we still strongly object to the traffic in a cul-de-sac. The main reason most of us bought up there was because it's a cul-de-sac. And we purposefully bought in that area in a cul-de-sac. And you can probably understand how you would never think that moving into a cul-de-sac that would eventually become a thoroughfare. Just by the definition of the word and the fact that there was no stub road up there and nothing in the plans when we purchased up there. So our goal up there is to keep it as a cul-de-sac and not have it as a through road. And if you think about what Mr. White was saying, that most of those multi-family homes would be on that top end, which would be the traffic that would come out and dump into that cul-de-sac. It's about 235 feet from the stop sign to where that road would be. And just think about all the morning and evening traffic, delivery traffic, construction traffic coming through that really small area at all times. And where that road would come out, the folks who live on the back end of the cul-de-sac, you know, street or car lights in their house continuously, you know, at the dark time and people coming through. So that's mainly what I wanted to bring to your consideration. I understand that there probably needs to be another route in and out, but it just seems to me that an existing cul-de-sac should stay a cul-de-sac. That's where it was to start with, and without any stub road there to think that that could be a thoroughfare. Just think about if you lived there now as a cul-de-sac where you were able to walk through, speak with your neighbors, sit outside. With constant traffic, that will all change. And I know I've lived in neighborhoods where my house was through a neighborhood to go, and I'll admit, I didn't really think much about the neighborhood I was traveling through. It was just a means to get to my home. And so there will just be people zooming through there, even if you say there are, you know, there are traffic limitations. People don't do that. So the one thing I would like the council to consider is that if this does go through, and if that absolutely must be a thoroughfare, could we put traffic calming features in from the very beginning? Not waiting, because studies have shown that if you don't do it from the very beginning, it doesn't happen. So we would just ask the council to really consider, number one, not having it at all, but if it must go through, having traffic calming instituted from the very beginning. Thank you all for hearing me this evening, and thank you for what you do. We appreciate it.
All right, next person is Luann Dooley? Duty, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So as we told the planning committee when we met with them a few weeks ago, and as Suzanne just said, we have absolutely no objection to what they want to do as far as the housing goes. I have no problem with 143 patio homes and 70 single homes. That's not our concern. Our concern is, as was just stated, the fact that we bought on a cul-de-sac for a reason, that we expected that it would be quieter traffic-wise. If you look at studies, you'll find that generally speaking, if a cul-de-sac becomes a main thoroughfare, the value of those homes goes down. Now, I'm a retired person. There are other people living in the patio homes there who can't really afford for our homes to be devalued because of a thoroughfare being put on our cul-de-sac. So I'd like for that to be, part of what you think about. I consider myself a fairly spry person, but there will come a day when I'm not. And the value of the home would be what I would be using if I needed to move into assisted living. If the value of my home goes down, that could possibly impact the type of assisted living facility that I went into. Additionally, what was presented earlier in earlier meetings was the amount of traffic that the patio homes would go mainly to senior citizens or young couples. But we do have people in our patio homes that have 2 and 3 children. So now you're talking, because those patio homes, they look small from the outside, but we have 3 bedrooms. So you're looking at patio homes that have 2 adults who are probably working and 2 or 3 teenagers. And so you're not looking at 2 cars per home, you're looking at multiple cars and multiple trips per day. So we'd like you to kind of take all of that into consideration. Again, I'm not objecting at all to the housing, but I would like to see if there is not some other alternative. Also, if you look at that, even for like large trucks and emergency vehicles, if you've been up there and you've looked at it all, that's going to be one hard turn for any of those vehicles. So I just want to thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. Next, Cindy Watson.
Good evening, and thank y'all for taking the time to listen to us. We appreciate everything you do for us. I'm speaking on behalf of Governor Hills Homeowners Association, the original 34 lots that were there. We have several concerns. The planned time for this project, 12 years. That's 12 years of construction trucks coming through. Who's going to be responsible to see we do not have the same problems we had in Section 2? Nobody seems to take responsibility for what goes on once these permits are awarded. Somebody needs to be responsible. Traffic is going to be a problem, no matter how you look at it. On-street parking. From all I know, there's no overflow parking in the new section. Where are they going to overflow their parking? That's a lot of homes for no overflow parking and no on-street parking. We are right now concerned about the loss of value to our homes, and in fact have had several homeowners now say, we want out. We're getting ready to move because we don't want to be here. We don't like it. We're not happy with it. We think that the town should require at least a minimum of a 5-year bond that is required to stay in place 5 years after this is finished, that would cover damages to anything in the old sections, because nothing was done about Section 2. There needs to be one person, one company that is legally responsible for everything that happens. There should have been a homeowners association in Section 2. There was none. When we came into being, thank God for Jimmy English, because that man made sure it was done right. I can say that honestly. Jimmy was the one who made sure everything was done right. There was rules put in place. There was a detailed plan of how it would be handled, how every house had to look, what amenities had to be available. There was none of that done in Section 2. And if you will look at the package I gave you, you will see in the back section, this is what Section 2 was supposed to be. This is what Town Council voted on. This is the minutes of the meeting. This is what went on. This is what Parcell and Ziegler brought before the Town Council and got approved. This is what we should have had. It's not what was there. Nobody made sure that that was done. Parcell and Ziegler came in. They brought everybody pictures of what they would do. They sat down. They talked with us. They said, what are your concerns? We went over them. They helped us work through a system that worked for them. That's what should have been done with this. We're getting nothing. We're getting a piece of paper that doesn't even have all the houses in the older sections drawn on it. It's showing all the houses that connect up to it at Crest Ridge, not there. It's very deceiving when those houses are missing. There should be preferential treatment given to local businesses for a project this big to help local businesses survive too. We've also had homeowners who have spent thousands of dollars cleaning up the problems from Section 2, that nothing was done to reimburse them. Nothing has been done to fix the problems yet. These need to be addressed. My final question to y'all is, who is going to be in charge? Who is going to say, every house has to have this, every house has to be this? Or is it just going to be, do whatever you want? It cannot be do whatever you want, because that's what happened in Section 2. It needs to be a plan that you have, a detailed plan that they have to follow. And as far as the entrances and exits and the traffic, they have been offered another option that would route it out onto the upper section of Industrial Avenue. And they say, well, it's too cost prohibitive. What about all the dirt they're going to have to move out of what they're getting ready to build to move it over there and put that route out that way to help eliminate some of the traffic? The police department came in and put in a stop sign at the end of Terra on Crest Ridge. on Emerald Crest. That stop sign could be as big as this room, and I guarantee you people won't stop. They don't care. It's not been there. We've had stop signs, yield signs. We had the biggest stop sign I've ever seen in my life. I mean, the thing must have been this wide at one point. Nobody stopped. People still don't stop. So, thank you for putting in the stop sign, but it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. In conclusion, I would just like to say thank you. Please take into consideration all the problems that have happened in the previous sections. And this is not part of us, but we really do not need the trouble that's going to come with it associated with us. Thank you, and have a nice evening.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Judy Strait.
Please forgive me, I'm a little nervous with public speaking, but this is something that's very important to me, and I want you to be aware that I'm very concerned about it. I moved to Bedford approximately 3 years ago. What happened was I walked downtown and people spoke to me. I went in stores and they chatted with me. I thought, this is it, this is where I'm coming. Well, I bought a townhouse on Emerald Crest Drive. And I was very happy with that because it was in a cul-de-sac, and when I moved from West Virginia, I had been on a public road that was very busy. It's not pleasant to be in heavy traffic. So I bought on the cul-de-sac, and I want it to remain a cul-de-sac. It's very precious to me, and I'm very concerned that it remain that way. But I do want to point out something. Nobody has mentioned what the residents, the future residents of this development are going to be dealing with. I'm concerned for them too, and I want them to love Bedford as much as I do. I think it's imperative that the developer have a dedicated access and egress for that development. When you consider 200 homes, it's going to be imperative that they have a dedicated access and egress. I think that the two proposed routes that they're planning, the developer's planning, is minuscule to what's going to be needed for that development. That's all I have to say, and thank you for your time.
Tony Orange.
Hello, Tony Orange. I live at 1284 Emerald Crest Drive. And at the recent planning committee meeting, Mr. White had mentioned that he was maximizing his unit yield. So I've been a cost accountant, a CPA, and now I'm a real estate agent, and have done that most of my life. So I know a thing or two about maximizing unit yield, and I understand making a profit, and I want people to make profits. That's why they're in business. in celebrating Will and his service, thank you, Will, to our community, I was wondering, do these developers even live in our community? Are they from Bedford? Does anybody know? No? So when I moved, so my question to you all is at what cost will these 213 units, what's that cost going to be? When I moved to Emerald Crest, I moved there to be in a quiet elderly community, and in 2007, and then in Joseph Stream's apartments, they built about 30 of those. That increased the traffic. The new addition above us that they were talking about earlier, phase 2, that increased traffic. There's 40 to 45 homes there. We have many children that play on the streets. We have many adults that walk their pets on these streets, and it used to be safe to do that. So again, at what cost will you allow another 213 homes to be built and funnel out on these quiet, narrow streets? Will the cost be one of our children playing in or near the street that's killed? Remember, our homes only have a few feet in the front yard. Will it be an elderly person walking their pet in the morning that's struck and killed? Remember, they bought here thinking it was a quiet, safe neighborhood, just like this lady mentioned. From the end of Emerald Crest near me, all the way down Woodhaven in Town and Country, there are no sidewalks. People are going to funnel through Woodhaven to get to 460 to go to Roanoke. So this 213 unit build affects many streets, 2 subdivisions, and hundreds of homeowners. I've only had 2 cars in my life parked on the side of the street here at Emerald Crest, and both have been hit. So you see, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It also affects those getting off work at Cintas, Brown's Construction, Swans, where between 3 and 5 p.m., traffic waiting to get onto Burks Hill is backed up. What's their time worth or their lives? Many have said they're fixing up their homes, as Cindy mentioned, and are selling. These are our friends. These are our good neighbors. And they feel like they have to move. It's a great time to sell, but it's a really bad time to buy, unless you're coming from New York and New Jersey and you just have tons of cash. So who's going to buy their home if there's 600 to 800 cars a day passing by, or whatever the count is? I haven't heard that lately. Who wants to live in a noisy, dirty construction zone for the next 8 to 12 years? Some of us will be gone by then, and the trucks and the skid steers and the hammers would still be going strong. What happens to our home values? Well, I normally don't show homes in the phase 2 area because I heard when they were building that there were quality issues, and there is no HOA. Homes that are joined together are bound to have problems with no resolution board. But last week I had an elderly lady who wanted to downsize. She's sold 60 acres down in Livingston, and I showed her one of those homes. While I was showing it, I had to tell her about the construction project and how that's going to affect her. We are bound by the Virginia Code to disclose material facts in relation to the property that we are showing. She bypassed our neighborhood and on Saturday bought a townhome elsewhere in Bedford. What does that tell you? What's that tell you about our property values? Would you vote if this was in your backyard? And how would you vote if it was in your backyard? We look at you, each one of you, our town council members, to help protect our home values and our way of living. There's a lot of land for sale in and around Bedford that has a better outlet for traffic than this. And there is another piece of property that's owned by Zimmix LLC Trust that funnels out on Burks Hill. I don't know who they are. I've also heard that Witt was willing to sell these people a piece of property to come out on industrial. So we're looking at each one of you to determine what that cost to our community is going to be. And in ending, I know some of you, but I don't know all of you. In ending, I think that if any of you stand to profit or have a conflicting interest in any aspect of real estate, that you step down from casting your vote. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next is Kelly, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kelly Wojciechowski, and I live at 1316 Emerald View Court. I've only lived there for 2 months. I didn't know any of this was going on. We just bought a townhome. We wanted an end unit, and that one was for sale. And it was had a little land in between us and the townhomes, next to us. there's a little bit of a field in between across the street, and we thought that was gonna stay like across the street, just empty. No one told us there was gonna be a road there. No one told us there was a development there until we saw the sign in the side yard. And then we started asking questions. I know we've only been there for 2 months. We've never been offered land. We've never been offered anything. But like I said, we didn't even know it was gonna happen, so. We have a beautiful home, but the neighborhood is wonderful and neighbors are fantastic. And we like walking our golden retriever, and she just runs around in the side yard. There's a lot of wildlife back there. We have deer and rabbits, and believe it or not, we had a black bear the other night. And we really, really do not want a road right next to our house. I mean, we were under the assumption that when we bought this property, that was gonna be, our land, and, part of that side yard was our land. And, we would be able to just use it for, recreation, having our dog out there. And we were never ever told by, and our realtor will confirm this, that any of this was happening. So, yeah, that's all. I mean, I know you've heard a million stories from a million people here about this, but I think this probably is a terrible idea to put a road in that cul-de-sac. We already have problems with parking, and I can't even imagine what it's going to be like if there's, I don't remember the paper, but I know that there's just a phenomenal amount of traffic that's supposed to go by our house every day. And also, I'm not sure what kind of provisions that the builder is going to offer us, fences or trees or easements, or I don't know, but there's not a whole lot of, if you drive by there, it's not a big piece of land. So we might even be losing part of our property. And we paid extra because we were told it's an end unit, you're going to have a little extra land. So we actually paid above, the asking cost, quite a bit. So I would just like you to take that into consideration, that some of us, the new people who have just moved in, the 3 of us, didn't know any of this was happening. So I thank you for your time and to take to listen to me, even though I don't know a whole lot about what's going on. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Next is Anthony Arrigo.
Perfect. Good evening. My name is Tony Arrigo. I live at 1308 Emerald View Court, so my backyard is literally in the project zone here. Like Miss Judy, I am very new to Bedford. I've lived here for about 1.5 years. I'm an Army veteran. I'm a career firefighter. We specifically, my wife and I, we brought our kids here. It's quiet. It's a safe place. And honestly, after a 24-hour shift, I want to be left alone. And so Bedford's a perfect place for that. So, to one day be at the fire station and get a phone call from my wife saying, hey, our yard is now 10 feet long. I have 2 kids. I have dogs. I had a lot of concern. However, I did talk to Mr. Bower quite extensively. We went over the plan. I think we had 3 or 4 conversations for at least 30 minutes apiece. And I need my yard. A little bit different than my neighbors. I have kids. I got to have my yard. And the plan is much better than what it was. So I know I'm extending my support for the plan and the development. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak tonight? Yes. Please state your name and your address for us, okay?
My name is Andrea Trotter. I live at 1262 Emerald Crest Drive. I live directly.
Excuse me, ma'am. Can you spell your last name for me, please?
Trotter. I live directly in front of the stop sign, thank you, that was put in. I have seen all of the traffic, both once my neighborhood was built and once Section 2 was built. My grandkids were out riding their bikes and stuff yesterday, and with the construction up top, we had many construction trucks come in, and some even get stuck in front of my house. With all of that going on, I just ask that although it will cost you a little more, the safety of our kids, the mindset and the mentality of our neighborhood really needs to be kept intact. Because the stop sign is not stopping people, it's encouraging them to look one way before they turn. And although the Section 2 has some speed bumps, my house is directly in front of the stop sign, so one day if anybody misses that stop sign because there is so much traffic, I get the car in the house. So I just ask that you consider at least another way to get in. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, come on.
Well, my name is Josh Turner. We live at 1111 Emerald Crest Drive. We were approached by the developer for, obviously, the extension of our yard, and I feel like at this point, they're gonna build something whether it's approved or not, and if they don't do it, then all of us that are in that one stretch lose all of our concessions for an additional yard. So if they build it, we're gonna all have a shrunken backyard, is the understanding that we were all given. So at this point, our household is giving support for it in the sense that if they're gonna build something, at least give us a buffer and a choice of what we would like to do with our backyard. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Stone. I live at 1252 Emerald Crest Drive. And my main concern is the kids and my wife. She walks. I can't walk anymore, but my wife does. She walks our little dog. But my main concern is the kids on Emerald Crest and Emerald Crest, mainly on Emerald Crest. We had a lady that lived on Emerald Crest drive up to where there was a white car parked outside of the house across the street, by Suzanne's house. And they since went Virginia Tech. But she raised hell. She really raised hell because the guy was swerving through her neighborhood, probably because there's cars parked on the street. And the kids don't have any place to play except on the street, and the kids gravitate towards the street. So somebody is going to get hit, whether they'll get killed or not, I don't know. That's up to the future. But I just want to make you aware that the roads are very narrow and people do park on the street, and it's not a good situation. It's not a good situation now, let alone what it's going to be. And to rebut what the guy said earlier, the guy before me, the developers haven't turned over this property yet. Whether it will or not, I don't know. That's all I have to say.
Anybody else? Yes, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dina Massey.
Can you spell the last?
Spell the last name. I-E?
Yes, ma'am. I live at 1101 Colebrook Road. I do not live in Governor's Hill, nor do I live in Section 2. I am here tonight as a concerned citizen of Town and Country and on Colebrook Road and some of the residents that are there. As I've listened to some of these other people speak about the traffic now through our area, and I don't have small children anymore, my son is grown. But I will have to say the traffic through that area is extreme for that small community. And Chief, I really do appreciate the two stop signs, actually. There are two. There's one directly in front of my house, and then there's one directly in front of the other lady that spoke's house. So I do appreciate the stop signs, but I'm in total agreement with her. They've been yield signs I've lived there for 18 years, and it's hard for me to come to a complete stop. So as it is, I know for everybody else. My two concerns are from my property and the neighbors surrounding myself in Town and Country. Governor's Hill is a beautiful area. We all try to, and we've become one solid community. We kind of blend together through there, even with Phase 2. But the concerns for our neighborhood in Town and Country is that there was no accountability at all in Phase 2. None. The storm water plan was at its best minimal. I'm at the very bottom of the hill, so I get all the runoff from this entire development. I'm actually having inspection done on my property on Thursday because I'm having to deal with the county who had to take over because of poor planning in Section 2, and they're now having to take over and come in and look at still what we have, the ramifications of the process of Section 2, not to begin with what we're even considering and moving forward. Now, I'm all about growth. I love our town. I want to see it grow. We do need places for people to live. We want people to move here. We want this to be a beautiful place, but at what sacrifice are we going to do that? If you just take the time to walk that neighborhood, park your car and walk it. It's dangerous to walk that neighborhood because of the parking on the street. It is dangerous to walk that neighborhood because of the amount of traffic. There are young families, they're all the way to senior citizens, and me in the middle. And I think the plan is, like the previous speaker said, who's going to be responsible? Because nobody was responsible in Section 2 for everything that was lined out. So where's the responsibility going to come from? If there were separate right-of-way out to 122, off to industrial, that would mediate some of that traffic and divert it elsewhere, then I think that would be great. But I really do think it's very shallow to go offer 10 to 12 homes, whatever you did. It's almost like bribery. If we can move forward with this, you get this. But if we don't, we have it taken back from us. That is just wrong. On every level, it is wrong. But I challenge you, or I just ask you, take into consideration what they're saying, but not just for those two neighborhoods, but for Town and Country as well. Drive through that neighborhood and see how it impacts us. And part of that is city, and part of that is county. I happen to live on Colebrook, so I'm the last house in the town. I live on the town city line, or the city-county line. But I just want you to think, if you have to stoop to the levels that they're stooping to invade a cul-de-sac where these people bought precious homes, and you have to do this and stoop to those levels, and then dangle it like a carrot, and then say you're going to take it back if I don't get my way, that, number one, is very poor planning. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else? Mr. White, would you like to follow up on that?
I just want to kind of talk about some of the things that have popped up through the comments that we received. Obviously, tying into the cul-de-sac with a full access entrance was on our original plan. Obviously, we need a second access point into the development to meet fire marshal requirements to have, if you get over 30 lots, you got to have another way to get in and out in case it gets blocked. That access point originally was fire emergency access only. That would be either blocked off with some level of a gate, chain, shrubbery, or something like that could be driven over in an emergency situation. That became a permanent access point based upon feedback that we got from a meeting at the town office about what they thought would be a better option moving forward. Now, in our opinion, we're more than happy to peel out and take that cul-de-sac entrance out of it as a full access entrance. We were just responding to the feedback that we got previously when we brought this before, before we brought it before council, beforehand. Now, and I know that people, there's an assumption that when you have a cul-de-sac that roads are ending there and there's not going to be any development. That's not a fact. I have extended from cul-de-sacs probably 10 times in the last 5 years because cul-de-sacs now are built at the end of every road connection that is built with a connectivity point to any future development. That's always the case. That is a requirement that VDOT mandates, that we just can't stub roads anymore. We have to provide a cul-de-sac that would be removed at a later date if it ever happens. We have gotten VDOT approval for a very similar, and I know this is the town, but I think the town kind of follows what VDOT's guidance is on roadways. We have another that's a very similar tie into a cul-de-sac, not in Bedford, but in Campbell that VDOT oversees. It's just what happens as a progression and that there's available land. And that's the key thing here, is that the developer for this project that we're talking about today also owned those lots and built those patio homes. So they had control over the lots of whether or not to sell them or not. The developer himself gave up 2 additional patio homes that should have been in that cul-de-sac for this secondary access point for future connectivity. So we're more than happy to have a discussion about making that an emergency access only, and we're more than happy to do that. That's something that we would definitely, that was our preference in the first place. Now, I know that stop signs sometimes don't work, and I know people were concerned about how traffic was going to approach the cul-de-sac and leave. I've had some discussions with the developer about what options that we could do. Obviously, there are traffic calming measures such as speed humps and things like that. Now, I'm not talking about aggressive speed humps that are very abrupt, but some speed humps that would be under VDOT approval levels that would keep vehicles from hitting it at fast speeds and almost mandating a stop just because people don't want to hit it like it's a ramp. We can definitely add that as a part of a condition into that tie into the cul-de-sac as well. Now, looking at some of the issues that happened in the previous development, I wasn't a part of that. I wasn't a part of the design of that. And looking at those design plans, just in where we got into trying to tie all this in, there were some issues that I don't know how they got passed on the road review. There should have been additional measures that should have captured stormwater, that it shouldn't have happened the way that it did. I will say that regulations have changed for stormwater management, and we will get a thorough review at the county level for stormwater, E&S control, and stormwater management as far as detention and quality control. So we obviously will have to meet all those requirements. Now, as the developer does have to post bonds for stormwater and E&S, road construction, utilities, all that has to happen. Now, obviously, those bonds are released either once it's completed and final inspections have been approved on a project, or there's a certain time frame afterwards that those bonds will be released as a guarantee that those things are still working properly. So that there's always going to be some level of control just because of new regulations in the review process that will help satisfy some of the issues that happened in phase 2. Now, I'm not sure how 1 and 2 was started, and I know there's a homeowners association in one part and not in the other. Any new development that you do where it's multifamily, where it's townhouses, apartments, single-family detached, if we did something by right R1, We have to create a homeowners association. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It would be a separate homeowners association that has the responsibility to upkeep any on-site amenities, parks, any open space amenities that are out there. The key thing that they have to control is maintenance and upkeep and repairs to any stormwater management pond that we put on the site. That would be, and that's why any development you do nowadays has to have a homeowners association dedicated to that. And again, you know, we've talked about the feasibility of another connection point. We did look at the Witt property as a connection point. We got about 110 feet of vertical elevation change. We can't build a VDOT road greater than 10%. That's going to cause us to have at minimum a 40-foot fill section over top of the creek. And it's not only about money, it's about the impacts to the streams and wetlands that are potentially in the bottom of the creek as well, that are a factor in doing any type of development that is going across creeks. So we looked at some initial cost of the fill, road construction, culverts, impacts to streams and wetlands, and it kills any project to do a connection point. So that's why it's either, you know, if we can get this approved this way, or it's a thing where we have to peel back and do by right and just do an R1 development and tie it to one point, which obviously we're happy to do either way. Now I know the existing roads, people have concerns about the traffic that's on those roads and parking on the roads. All I can tell you is that those roads, by VDOT standards, can handle up to 4,000 vehicles per day. Now whether or not that's what you want to have in a neighborhood, it's a different story. It's about what the capacity of those roads are based upon width and the geometric design of those roads. So we're not getting at 4,000 trips per day, even with the addition of our development as we move forward. Now, and I know that there is growing pains from any locality. It doesn't matter where you're at. So if the town wants to see growth, and we think that there is a need for residential growth based upon what the developer has already done and built out there, there's going to be a growing pain at somebody's neighborhood. It's going to be at somebody's connection point to a development. So it's not that it's not going to be a difficult transition that'll have to happen. It's just where is that going to be? Obviously, this is a development that already has a stub connection for future development to this property. It was already as part of the original plat. There's a stub right-of-way connecting to our property for this project. Well, not for this project in particular, but for that land to be developed in the future. And that's all we're asking for today, is to move forward. We think that our option is better. Now, I would take offense at the idea that what we're doing is bribing. Obviously, we can only offer concessions to people that are adjoining us. And those people that are adjoining us that have land, that have yards, that have reached out to the developer after those stakes were taken, placed in the ground out there, that's not a land. We're not taking land. We just have located the land that our developer already owns. That's his property. It may have been assumed that you had a larger yard, but that's not the case. And I think it's realizing that when property corner stakes are in the ground, you realize, I thought my yard was bigger because it was cleared out a little further when I bought my house, but it's just not the case. We didn't take anything from anybody. We just identified what was ours and what we were looking to do improvements on, as far as making sure we didn't disturb what was belonging to our neighbors. So obviously, if there are adjoiners, and we reached out to the adjoiners that had voiced concerns to us. Now, there are some properties that we did not reach out to, and that's 1316, 1318, 1320. Now, we have some, we didn't get any feedback from them, at least the developer didn't, as they were going through. But we would offer the same condition to those 3 lots along there as well. And we would be happy to make that a part of our condition, to give that to them as well on those 3 lots. Now, obviously, the traffic was the big issue, you know, and I know stormwater was a big issue in the first one. I wasn't a part of this, but I remember the news articles and things like that, with water running under curbs. I can tell you right now that we're not going to do that. We don't at least the requirements that are set forth now are not going to allow that. There should have been inlets coming down the hill that capture the water that feed off the hill instead of having to come back in later and add those mounds to divert water back over and away. That's something that should never have been done. There should have been inlets at the connection points, and any connection point is trapping, feeding water. We're not going to let that slide over to the next street and jump the curb. We'll have inlets there to capture all that stuff as well. So I'll be happy to answer your questions if you have it.
All right, this time we'll close the public hearing. We got one more public hearing, I think, on some proposed zoning ordinance changes.
Notice hereby given of a public hearing to be held by the Town Council at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. For the purpose of hearing comment on proposed zoning ordinance changes, several sections of the zoning ordinance are proposed to change to add a new use, modify existing uses and standards, and amend provisions for permit applications as follows. 1, create a new use open-air market, including definitions, zoning district placement, requirements and permit process. 2, amend existing use amphitheater for the B2 zoning district and requirements. 3, amend existing use mini storage, mini warehouse requirements in the B2, CLI, and M1 zoning districts. 4, amend existing use standards for automotive repair garage in the B2 and M1 zoning districts. 5, amend provisions for application procedures for permitted uses to clarify requirements for site plans. Information has been on file in the Office of Planning and Community Development. Anyone who's in favor of or opposed to the proposed request now has an opportunity to express his or her views.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing on the proposed zoning ordinance changes. Anybody want to speak on that matter? No? Okay, we'll close the public hearing on the proposed zoning ordinance changes. All right, so the first item on our new business is the resolution permitting an office and parking area by conditional use permit in PRD P&O zoning district. So,
Mr. Mayor and members of council, the subject property located at 706 Burks Hill Road is zoned PRD with a traditional neighborhood overlay applied. Croft Senior Services Incorporated was issued a conditional use permit in 2008 to establish an insurance office on the property, establishing the TNO applied designation. The former residence that was converted to the office, a freestanding office building, a 3-car garage, 2 carports, and a paved parking lot in the rear are on the property now. The applicant is requesting a 32-foot by 42-foot building in the rear yard and a parking area with 4 spaces. The office use can be permitted in the TNO with a conditional use permit. The Burks Hill Road Master Plan is part of the comprehensive plan, and both PRD and TNO require setbacks to be determined with the CUP. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on June 3rd, 2021. The applicant spoke. The Commission discussed how many agents would be in a new office to assess that there would not be an increase in traffic. They also asked about the safety of the 2 entrances for entering and exiting the Burks Hill Road. The applicant discussed reducing the slope at the left entrance where this affects sight distance, and the applicant also asked for assistance in enforcing the speed limit in the area. As part of its deliberations, the Planning Commission discussed the need to confirm the building setbacks. The plan did not show a setback on the left side. The commissioners agreed 40 feet would be sufficient on the left adjacent to the other parcel owned by the applicant. A 55-foot side setback was shown on the right side. There was well over 100 feet shown on both the front and rear setbacks. The Commission voted 6-0 to recommend approval of the conditional use permit with the setback shown on the plan and a minimum setback of 40 feet on the left side. Tonight, Town Council is requested to consider this resolution issuing the conditional use permit for the plan presented as recommended for approval by the Planning Commission.
do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we adopt the conditional use permit for the plan presented as recommended for approval by the Planning Commission with setbacks is recommended.
Do we have a second? Second. Discussion. There was a little bit of discussion about the side driveways. What was the planning discussion on the planning commission about that right driveway, maybe the sight lines or something? Was that all clarified? I remember reading. Thank you, Mary.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm Mary Zirkle, Director of Planning and Community Development. The right side has a retaining wall that's older and actually seems to be better sight distance for pulling out, as an understanding, but I believe, in speaking with the applicant, they would actually use that as an entrance for the those going to the rear office. So in speaking with them, they seem to have a way of working out which entrance is safest for entering only or exiting only, and the other entrance, I believe the left one, would be improved by cutting the slope back on that side, and then just some signage showing which is best for entering and exiting for everyone. We didn't make that a condition because they'd already talked about it, and we discussed it with the builder who was present that evening.
Any questions? No? All right, roll call.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mr. Hartwick?
Aye.
Mr. Johannesson?
Aye.
Mr. Rush?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mayor Black?
Aye.
Motion carries with 7 ayes.
All right, the next one is resolution permitting a multifamily residential development and R3 single-family development standards by conditional use permit in a PRD zoning district.
The subject property located at Crest Ridge Drive and Emerald View Court is zoned planned residential development and is vacant of an improved use. The applicant is represented by White Engineering and Design, which proposes to construct 143 multifamily residential dwellings and 70 by right single-family dwellings using smaller R3 development standards. The PRD zoning district allows the multifamily use and R3 standards with a conditional use permit in section 606. The developer will need to study whether the public sewer system can accommodate the number of proposed units for approval by the Bedford Regional Water Authority. Planning Commission held a public hearing for the proposed multifamily and single-family development use on June 3rd, 2021. After hearing comments from 9 members of the public that spoke in opposition to the request, commissioners expressed concerns about traffic, the lack of diverse housing mix, and the lack of connection to other streets to provide another way in and out of the proposed development. Commissioners were also concerned that the developer had not provided conditions in writing shared verbally in the hearing by White Engineering that are related to the promised landscape buffer depth and the additional land that had been offered to the existing property owners adjacent to the proposed new dwelling units. Any private agreements between the developer and property owners in the existing development are civil matters that cannot be enforced by conditions imposed by the town. The town may still request assurance that these matters have been addressed with written private agreements as part of their deliberations and decision. The Planning Commission voted to not recommend approval for the plan as presented to council by a vote of 6-0. The commission advised the developer to talk with the owners of existing properties to work out the development design. Town council is requested to consider a resolution as to whether to issue a conditional use permit for the plan presented with conditions offered by the applicant. As part of a resolution approving the application for a conditional use permit, council may also require additional conditions or amend those presented. If council does not pass the resolution, then the conditional use permit is not approved and the zoning permit will not be issued for the request.
Okay, we have a motion on resolution permitting a multifamily residential development and R3 single-family development standards by conditional use permit in PRD zoning district.
I'll make a motion for what you just said, Tim, based on the verbiage that you said about meeting all the other conditions. I don't have it in front of me, Bart, but as you outlined, he's got a lot of hoops to jump through before we can actually approve.
I need to know what conditions for.
He just mentioned.
That's in there, it's not in front of me.
So the conditions that were in the resolution, the conditions that are currently in the resolution.
Okay, so in addition to that, this is what I'm looking at right here. Is that what you're talking about?
That's what I'm looking for.
Right, the resolution, but actually there was a change to that, I believe.
So we're not voting on what the planning commission voted on?
No.
This is a new thing. Is it properly?
I don't have the
council?
resolution in front of me.
Yeah, so it's the conditions, it's the 6 conditions that are in the resolution. Now,
There it is.
if there's any changes to that those conditions, then we'll have to.
I think that's the motion to approve. This is the resolution.
So right now, we have a motion to approve it with the 6 conditions
Exactly.
included in the
That's correct.
resolution.
Okay.
But we don't know what they are yet, for sure.
He's talking about it.
Yes.
I think the town manager points out that there was a copy of a resolution, and is that what you were, is that your motion?
That's my motion, and I can't find the
All right.
resolution in my packet.
Well, the resolution is here, and it should have been everybody's packet.
Yes.
I think that's what the motion on the table is, and it would be proper to have a second if there,
I guess so.
if there wants to be a second, and then you, of course, you can have other motion.
So is there a second to that motion at this time?
I'll second.
Okay. So now we'll open it for discussion.
Well, to me, I mean, this front page right here says a whole lot that not all the boxes have been checked yet. I mean, I'm not comfortable voting on anything until this public sewer has been thoroughly tested and we know it's good to go, because I wrote, I think Dina just said they were having trouble down in the lower section there, so we don't know what additional problems there are going to be. And who's paying for the sewer pipes to go in?
So I guess, and that's why we're willing to kind of clarify what our request is. So our layout is identifying 213 lots, okay, that are residences that were a mix of patio homes and single-family detached. Whatever development we do, if we go by right, we have to do the sewer study to determine what that is going to be. Right. So in discussions with BRWA, we came to the consensus that we would wait to see how many units we would get approved to do so that we can target areas of impact. So our request is to build a maximum 213 units, and we could say at the ratio of mix that we have before us. If we have to reduce our number of units because of sewer capacity, then we would reduce our number of units based upon the ratio that we have proposed with the mix between single family and residential detached. I mean, multifamily and residential detached. So either way we go, we've got to do the sewer study. It's just, there could be a thing to where it's phased, that we'll be able to build 60 units because of the sewer conditions that are now, that it has the capacity. And we may have to do those upgrades. BRWA is not going to approve our site plans for work on this project until we provide them with adequate information that justifies that it can handle the existing sewer. The cutoff here is that the insurance is that BRWA will not approve this as we proceed unless the conditions are met, that we identify or show where problem areas are and if we improve those problem areas. Now, improvements to the sewer system would be in a combination effort between the developer and BRWA. BRWA, since there are CSOs inside the public sewer here, they are mandated by DEQ to do, I believe, $100,000 worth of improvements to the sewer system every year as part of the DEQ requirements. So my discussions with Ron English at BRWA was they could target out with their money to be spent for improvements that they have to, based upon where we identify those problems may be. If it's a thing to where it's greater than what they can put out, where their money is already tied up into other projects of improvement, then it would be a thing to where they would work with us and give the developer credits back for connection fees and things like that to help improve the county sewer system, county town sewer system, BRWA's.
So we have no assurance that you're going to be able to get sewage to all these units as presented tonight? 213?
That would be the study that comes through.
Right, so you don't know that you can even finish the project?
without doing additional improvements. And that's the thing. So what they've identified is there's several sections of 8-inch sewer line that are flat and potentially have a lot of root issues and things of that nature because it's old terracotta pipe or concrete pipe joints that are susceptible to root growth and things of that nature. So it's not that anything is possible to build, it's just the timing of improvements downstream. And that's why I mentioned that part of our requirements when we start our first project is to survey the route, and then we will work with BRWA to determine exactly the extent of our study limits for us to provide that data to BRWA so they know what type of flow they can handle. That will determine what we can build at that point without improvements, or if we have to do improvements to move on to the next phase.
How long would that study period take?
I'm not sure. It's really kind of hard for me to say. I mean, that's a study period that may take a couple of months. Obviously, we're in the study. We give the information to BRWA. They give it to WRA engineers that handle their water models and sewer models. And they don't have a lot of information for what's already as part of the town's network of stuff. I guess even after they took it over years ago, they still don't have a lot of information on it. So they don't have those. We will be helping them build their sewer models because they just don't have enough information to build it on their own.
What assurance do we have of that? There's none of that in here. There's no assurance of that in here.
Assurances of
that this will even happen. The conditions. It needs to be. This is
my point is
you're asking for conditions. That's what we can do is put conditions on this. You're saying pass it and hope we do it.
If we do by right, it's still the point to where
we've gone there. I'm aware you can go by right.
Right.
We're talking about this.
Right.
Well, even by right, you got the same
The
sewer.
condition is not in here with the water.
It's the same sewer issue whichever way we go. We still have to go through the study. And we can only improve it as long as the sewer has the capacity to do it.
What I was referring to, I finally found, was it says, the last part, the developer will need to study whether public sewer can accommodate the number of proposed units for approval by the Bedford Regional Water Authority.
Right.
If it don't meet it, he don't get to do it.
And yet we've rezoned it.
It's a conditional use
That's a
permit.
It'll
condition.
still be there.
If he doesn't meet the condition, it doesn't work,
But it's okay.
right?
Mr. Berry, once we vote on this, it runs with the land, right? This sticks, even if they don't do it.
But that would mean, wouldn't it mean that whoever owns the property next would still have to meet those conditions, or whoever buys it from them would have to come back with a new conditional use permit, right?
Well, without seeing the whole picture of exactly what they would be, what they're asking, I don't know how I'd answer that question. I just thought, if there's no condition, there's no condition.
What kind of condition would you propose
I don't know.
to
What I
deal
think-
with the sewer issue?
I think what they need is an attorney to help put this together instead of just coming up here and asking us to do all the legwork, to lay out all the conditions to make this happen. We'd like it to happen, but it's here, pass it, and then we'll probably do all this. We'll probably hold up our agreement with these 11 people. We have no way to know that. We have nothing assuring us really much here.
There are no guarantees. But the sewer part is really what caught my eye when I was reading this. I mean, this needs to be taken care of before we move forward. I mean, so that we know how much that can handle, that property.
Yeah, right. Because from a density standpoint, if the sewer capacity is not there for 200, and you come back and you tell me I can only build, the sewer capacity is only 100 units now, well, that's going to make this neighborhood a whole lot happier because now they're only going to have 100 units there instead of 200 units.
So you're preaching
So
to the choir.
I see where you're going with that, yeah, well, that's why I was asking kind of the time frame on how quick you could get. Because this was kind of a new wrinkle today. I mean, this one, I kind of.
Right, man. I don't see it as a wrinkle. It's the normal process that we go for any development. We obviously, in order to get site plan approval for any project that we work on, we have to do some level of a water capacity to make sure there's enough water. We got to make sure that the sewer lines have the capacity to hold the sewer. Now, our opinion is that that's why we're asking for the max density of 213 at the ratio that we have set. Now, it's a thing to where if BRWA says we can build 25% of this, and obviously we're doing this in phases, we may be building the first phase of this before there's a need to do sewer improvements. And it doesn't matter if you approve this today for 213 units, there's never an assurance that all 213 units will ever get built, because you don't know what the economy will ever do later on, or how long it would take that to get done. So this is we see that as a technical requirement to meet a maximum density that we're asking for. If it's a thing to where BRWA tells us that we have the capacity to add 100 units before we do improvements, we will add and do 100 units, up to 100 units at that point. Then we will make repairs, improvements downstream to where we can get up to the maximum that we have asked for in the conditional use permit.
Well, the way I read it, a couple of years ago, Mr. Darren and I was in Richmond for several weeks. Conditional use is if you don't meet those conditions, it doesn't apply. So if it's 100, all you can build is 100.
That's
right. You want to make improvements, the max is 213.
But there is no condition. What I'm saying is, there's no condition in our resolution dealing with the sewer issue.
Are we voting on 100 units here? Yeah, that would affect traffic, that would matter, but it would also create a different layout. If we're supposed to do a planned residential development where they take into account the land, landscape, trees, it used to be a dog park, well, if it only can do 100, are they all going to be jammed up front with just a bunch of maximize their units? Probably.
I don't think we do site plans though until we do the studies.
That's right. We don't move through that level of detail until we know that what we can or cannot build.
Mr. Mayor, I believe the question of a site plan is up to you. If you want to make that a condition, if they do a site plan that includes this study, then you can make that a condition. You do have a motion on the floor. It could be amended or voted on or whatever.
I mean, we are happy to offer the condition that we would build no more units than what is the capacity of the public sewer system. Now, as the sewer system increases in capacity, obviously we would want to build up to 213 that we're asking for.
I think.
Would you also condition that the town would not be responsible for any?
No, town would not be responsible for any upgrades, costs associated with upgrading the sewer.
I don't think that makes much sense, to be honest with you, because who's going to make? If you approve it, it has consequences. So,
well, either
I think you need
or
to.
the developer is going to be responsible.
No, I think you need to have a site plan as a condition. I really do. That involves the issue that's raised about the sewer.
I mean, that's the biggie right there.
Yeah, the reason I'm, Regan, maybe I'm going off too liberal, and God forbid me be liberal, but the site plan of 231 units is a lot different than the site plan of something across the street here as far as expense. Right. And that's a full-fledged site plan, or is it a site plan? What's the space do up on the mini warehouses? Was that a full-fledged site plan? You follow what I'm trying to say? We start drawing water lines, and sewer lines, and electric lines, and all of that. That's a full-fledged site plan.
Certain elements were present in that were not here, and vice versa too. So we try to meet the intent of the ordinance and saying what you needed to have to make a decision. If you're not happy with what you've been presented with, then you do want to make a condition that gives you some assurances with where you're going with that. If you want to tie it to a site plan, that's a good idea as well. Which would be a next step here. Actually, in this case, it's going to be a preliminary plat and then a final plat for platting a subdivision, not so much a site plan. But you will first see stormwater management, because that's what they're going to have to figure out, where those are going to go through and place the road and the houses around it.
I will say I've been a part of a number of these meetings. Site plan requirements to go before for a rezoning is never a condition that I have seen. That is an expense that is would be astronomical for a development of this size, any size. It would be a cost of a huge risk to go through that process to get a site plan. Site plans would have to go through a series of review processes between multiple agencies that will take several months. Now, when we are looking to submit a site plan for construction on a project like this, we're only going to submit the site plan for the phase that we are working on at that time and the infrastructure that is needed to accommodate that at that time. There will be a multitude of site plans that come before this, before the town and VDOT or BRWA that has to review it. I would like you to keep in mind that we cannot stick a shovel in the ground to build anything until we get approval from all of the review agencies to make sure that what we are sticking on the ground meets road, utility, lot size requirements and all that stuff. So obviously we're not going to ever construct anything that doesn't meet that requirement. That's something that will go through the staff review for all the review agencies.
Right, so that would be approved by the town for basically road construction, BRWA for water and sewer construction, Bedford County, and let's get this straight, that's Bedford County is responsible for stormwater management and E&S, okay? And the reason for that is because that's what the state of Virginia says, counties are responsible for that, not towns. So I want to make that everybody aware of that. You know, we've caught a lot of heat over E&S issues that we had no control over and that we couldn't really do anything about, okay? So anyway, just keep that in mind. If you have E&S and stormwater management issues, that's Bedford County that's responsible for that, okay? And then, of course, VDOT, you know, and our engineering department would
coordinate with VDOT to make sure.
There's going to be a multitude of reviews on these site plans that, like I said, before you ever get a building permit.
And that's whether we do this or we do single family R1.
Right.
You know, and we would do the same thing with that. We would do it in phases, and all those plans would have to be submitted for review. Nothing can be built until we get approvals from all those agencies. We do not get a land disturbance permit for anything until that point.
And you will be required to place bonds for every one of those.
That's exactly right.
But I think the original question was the BWRA question as a condition on this motion. I'm not asking for, I'm not saying a site plan, but you need to know that you can put water and sewer up there.
Right.
That's, to me, is part of the condition.
Right, yeah, and we will not build anything that's, we couldn't get a permit to build anything anyway if it didn't meet BRWA requirements for capacity. That isn't going to, if we submit anything greater than 10 new homes, BRWA is going to make us provide the study. Whether it's 10 or 213, that's going to be a requirement that BRWA does regardless.
And you're going to do that before you even prepare your site plan?
We're not going to prepare a site plan until we would get survey done on the property to pick up the route for that sewer, to verify its elevations, sizes of pipes, provide that information to BRWA. They would run the water model and target any potential issues. They don't know for sure that there are issues. They believe there may be some issues. Now, there are overflow points that happens due to rain events, but that doesn't mean that you limit the capacity, that the sewer capacity is completely limited because of a rain event overflow.
So it's kind of redundant to us to make a condition of something that he's going to have to do anyway. I mean, that's I think the point he's trying to make is, you know,
I'm not going to ask him to do it.
Shouldn't he know that before they start all this? You got a huge development you're looking into, and we don't even know how much hookup they got. He doesn't know.
How much what?
That you make, can you do 100, can you do 213? You don't know.
All I can tell you is before that we can get any plan approved for construction, it has to go through review through BRWA, and they will verify that what is there is adequate. If it's not adequate, we will not get a permit to build. If we do not have water and sewer, we do not get plat approvals for a subdivision of property. If it ends up being the thing to where we cannot build on this at all, then somebody else could come in here and decide they don't want to build that conditional use permit. And because even if there's a conditional use permit, you can still go back to build by right.
What you would have to do.
Or if somebody wants to do something different, they would have to come back and ask for a new request.
All right, any other questions on the sewer issue? Bruce?
Okay, I know you have to do a study with the sewer to find out exactly how many homes you can really do before you even start building anything. Why didn't you do that before coming to us so you knew exactly what you could or couldn't do?
Because that is an expense that we will have to endure of time and money that we will do at a later date, depending, because we don't, until we know exactly what we are building here, it's hard for us to determine what type of flows will cause problems downstream. So when we input data into a water or sewer model, we need to tell them what our capacity additions will be to the sewer system. That's not something that is typically done beforehand. It's after you get approval to move forward with the project. Any engineering like that is typically done after.
I guess what you're saying is, you don't want to put that expense out if this is a dead end. Anyway.
That is correct.
All right,
Or do that expense twice, because if we ask it for one way, we would have to go back through a process for an alternate.
Mr. White, you came to us last time with similar to the same equation or whatever. The people have spoken several times on issues and stuff like that. There was some issues last time, some stuff that people was not happy with. And this time it still seems like there's issues that it would need to be overcome or before we would even move forward with this. I mean, y'all can do what you want to do because you have that right to do that.
Sure. I will say, while there were a number of people that got up and spoke, we submitted to public record letters of support that support our project, and there were 11 of those people. Now, 2 of them came out and actually spoke in person today, but we also submitted 11 total support letters with our request.
And I'm just making a statement here. I see a lot of the same issues that we had before, and I understand that. And I mentioned this last time in the roundabout way, so I'm just going to be blunt this time. Why is it so hard not just to have a town hall meeting and invite everyone who has concerns, just like the ones that came tonight, and maybe come up with a win-win type situation that, and I know not everybody's going to be happy. I get that. I understand that. And you all may have to give a little something up, but the residents may also. But if you could come to the middle of the road somewhere, but you got to communicate.
Right, and I think when we came up beforehand, I think probably 90% of the issue that I heard was traffic. Okay, that is a big issue. All right, and I know that was a big concern as we move forward with traffic. And I think some of the people that spoke against it last time obviously had a little less opposition to it with our unit mix, but trying to accommodate in the best way possible. I mean, obviously we're going to move forward, and I want to reiterate this, and I don't know how clear I was at the beginning. Our intention was not to come back here. We came back here because we had people that were living on our adjoining property line that asked us to look at other options for the development because it was going to impact them greatly. And they didn't realize how much I think that was going to impact them until property stakes going out. We were moving forward with tree clearing and we put them off. Contracts were signed for them to come in and start moving in logging equipment. We held off because of the feedback that we got with the people that live on the adjoiner. So now we did not do that before the planning commission meeting. We took the advice from planning commission who asked us to maybe reach out to those people on those adjoiners, and the developer did that. And we felt that the best way to accommodate their biggest need, and it's the biggest need that we have something in control of, was to give them a buffer. They gave them either extra yard that they could handle in any way that they chose to do that. So they could keep it as extra yard or whatever, build something up, put in a fence and use it for their kids to play in or let their dogs run around in. That was the effort to try to see if we can come to some type of agreement. We're not going to solve the traffic issue completely. Now, based on some of the conversations that have happened already tonight, we're more than happy to assist the folks that live at the cul-de-sac and say that we would be happy to condition that would be emergency access only, if that's something that you guys would like to see. Because that was never our intention for that to be a full access in the first place. So that's entirely up to you. We're definitely open to that.
Well, bars built these small subdivisions, and I'm not comparing us to bars. But they put cul-de-sacs as it's developing subdivisions. Now there are many cul-de-sacs and many homes down where those cul-de-sacs used to be. So I always figured the cul-de-sac is a step.
Yeah, my neighborhood is the same way. It looks like it's a dead-end street, but it's set up to extend to the next open land. And it's going to be the same thing for this project. We have a couple of stubs that are going into potential developments. VDOT requirements, and I'm sure the town is making us do that, is to kind of follow the VDOT's requirements there, is to stub to those properties. And at those properties, we can't just leave it as a stub because it's a non-turnaround location. We have to put in a cul-de-sac. So you're going to see cul-de-sacs at the end of this one that will be labeled as temporary, but in all reality, that's something that would be coming out for future extension if the neighboring properties are built in the future.
Yeah, the difference there.
And I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but I'm sure not going to throw you all under the bus. But those houses were built and marketed it, and if you had a realtor that knew what you were doing, they would have told you it was a 10-foot backyard.
Right.
Or if you move into a dense neighborhood and you see 50 acres behind you with trees, what do you think's going there?
Right. But there's always that potential. Obviously, when I bought my house, I made sure that what was behind me was a single-family home, just because I don't want that risk, but you don't know what's going to come in. And I've been a part of multiple projects where it's 80 acres of undeveloped land, and then there's stub streets tying over into it. And I will reference the Cornerstone development that I worked on for like the last 16 years.
Well, not a lot of us don't think like that.
Right. Right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
The public hearing was over, and I would think this is time for discussion among the councilmen unless you want to reconvene the public hearing. But there is a motion on the table.
Okay. So we can't question the developer on the things that we're discussing?
Well, I think with a motion on the floor, you probably need to deal with that.
Go ahead.
I just have one last question.
Well,
and to reopen the public hearing, if that's what you want to do.
No. But I don't think so. If you have a question, you should ask it. I don't hear a lot of questions coming from the dais. I hear comments and reactions, and that is not the proper procedural.
Over and over. All right. A simple question. I know you say you spoke to like several people out there in the community, correct?
Well, not the developer did.
Yeah, the developer did, excuse me, I'm sorry. So did you speak to I'm kind of going off of CG's day about a community gathering. Do you speak to everybody in that whole subdivision?
I think the developer.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
We had something that was something we could offer that would help benefit them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Berry, I made the motion on the resolution that we read.
And there was
I
a
read
second.
condition,
And
I
you,
read the conditional use, apparently not too broadly, but I'm going to clarify this. If the sewer doesn't meet, it doesn't meet the part of the condition, so it doesn't apply. Is that right?
I don't think so. I think there's a condition in the resolution that references the sewer.
There is.
And it is.
I don't think so.
No, there's no condition in the resolution.
Oh, I'm reading it.
So what we're trying, I think what we're trying to figure out is, I mean, we've got a set of conditions, but we need to add more conditions, because I certainly got some that we need to add, or we need to
but
discuss.
if you feel like you should, then someone should make such a
But I think we
motion
should
to add,
discuss
to
them.
amend.
I mean, I think we should discuss them before we,
Well, if you have a motion to amend the existing motion that's before you, and someone makes a motion, if it gets a second, then you can vote on that. If you want to add,
I mean, I'm not ready to add them as an amendment until we had a chance to discuss some of these other issues. I mean, maybe we shouldn't even have had a motion yet, and we should have just had a discussion.
well, Mr. Rush had a right to make a motion,
I
and it was
agree.
seconded.
So do we
If you
just
want
vote on that
to
motion
continue,
now?
if you don't want to, if you feel like more needs to be done before you vote on it, then you can move to postpone it.
We haven't actually discussed, there's been a lot of.
Right, we haven't discussed amongst us.
They haven't discussed it.
Right, I think maybe we could discuss it.
Okay.
That's right.
All right, so here's, I mean, let's discuss, I mean, he's made an offer tonight to get rid of the road into the cul-de-sac, which has been a big sticking point for the neighborhood. Now, I'll be honest, I was one of the ones that thought that was a decent idea, okay? I mean, because, I mean, we're talking 1,500 vehicle trips a day going out one road. And that's gonna be whether we approve this conditional use permit or they build 120, 130 single family homes. You're gonna have the same amount of trips, the way they calculate it. And all that calculation is done by VDOT standards. So the number of trips per day is gonna be very similar. Is that, can I ask that question if that's?
That was at the planning commission.
That was brought out at the planning commission.
If not more.
If not more, as a single family use.
Being that single family has more people in it.
Right.
It's going to at least be the same.
So it's going to be
Same
very
traffic.
similar.
The traffic issue has, to my mind, not been addressed, but.
So if the traffic count is going to be the same regardless, and we turn down this conditional use permit, and they go out and build single family homes, all that traffic is going to come out that one road.
Right, and we were told.
And there's nothing we can do about that.
And we were told they were going to do that last time. It never happened.
Okay. So if we can get more units in there, and we're okay with the traffic being 1,500 coming out, whether it's, you know, I mean, that's, to me, that becomes a moot point. I just thought it was about a way to have two entrances, but I'm willing to give that up if that's what the community wants, and they understand all that traffic is coming out one road. I mean,
You have eminent domain, why do you not help do something?
I'm sorry, we're discussing this up here. So that's one thing. The traffic common, certainly should be a condition. Whether it's one road, two roads, whatever, I think there should be some traffic common devices put in, just because to help that transition.
But as a condition, I don't know that we can just throw that out there. I don't even know what that is, traffic calming.
Speed bumps, so,
Okay, but we kind of need to narrow that down, that it means speed bumps. Who's paying for it and where?
The developer's paying for it,
Just a condition that says there has to be traffic calming measures. I mean, that's kind of broad.
And where are the speed bumps from?
Right, that's, I just think, I'm all for it, think we got it. Believe me, I don't want this to be, this is the fourth time I've addressed this issue. I don't want to have to come back, but if we have to, we have to. I think, that's why I do think having an attorney would have really helped. I think in previous developments, there's been an attorney to work with our town attorney and go back and forth. We don't have that luxury right now. So it makes it a little clunkier like this. But we can't, just to slap that in here right now, we need condition 6, traffic calming. I don't know what that really means.
Jamie, can you determine traffic calming?
That's what I'm trying to get.
Jamie, who determines traffic calming? What the mechanism is?
VDOT approved traffic calming measures.
Okay, whether it's a bump or a rumble strip.
There are like 4 different types of VDOT traffic calming measures. There are chicanes where you kind of make traffic kind of shift back and forth. But VDOT approved traffic calming.
Mr. Mayor, it seems like to me you're trying to build a motion while on the go here. And
because the motion is for as it's written. So if we're going to change the motion to add conditions, then we need to do that.
Yeah, because if we vote on the motion now.
I mean, the proponent is suggesting various things.
Right.
None of which are in the motion.
So, but if
so
we vote
I
the motion down, we don't have a chance to fix some of these things. If we vote the motion up, then we don't have a chance to fix any of these things. So
you're going to need to decide what you want to do.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, you have options of, voting on the motion, amending the motion, postponing the motion. You have various things you can do.
I think we should table it.
Is that a form of motion?
Is that a motion?
Okay, a few things. One, regardless how we vote tonight, there's going to be new homes developed in this neck of the woods regardless of what happens, whether we vote yes or vote no. And as far as traffic goes, yeah, I get the concerns about traffic. However, at the same time, you can always have a careless driver. It doesn't matter if it's 10 homes or 100 homes, and still be a danger to the people living in that community. Right now, what we're trying to do is trying to make the right decision to not only keep the people here safe, but also be able to see our town grow at the same time.
Did you have a motion?
I'll make a motion, we table it.
I'll second.
Need a second.
We got a second. So we got to vote on the tabled motion first?
Yes. The motion to table, you have to vote on that.
Table. And what's the time period to bring that back? Is there?
I don't think there is enough.
I don't think there is any. It's just, it's laid on the table until you bring it back.
Okay. All right, roll call.
Mr. Hartwick?
Aye.
Mr. Johannesson?
Aye.
Mr. Rush?
No.
Mr. Schoen?
No.
Mr. Stanley?
No.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mayor Black?
Aye.
Motion carries with 4 ayes and 3 nays.
So it's not laid on the table.
So, yes. Motion carries 4-3, so it's been tabled. All right? All right, so the next item on the agenda is the proposed zoning ordinance changes.
Planning Commission and Town Council directed staff to research the need for several zoning ordinance text amendments that could be undertaken prior to an anticipated full zoning ordinance rewrite. The Commission had been approached by a property owner in October 2020 that wished to have an occasional flea market, and staff was approached by a business that wanted to have an amphitheater. The Commission was also interested in clarifying regulations for many warehouse units based on permit requests that had recently reviewed. In October 2020, Town Council requested staff review a way to simplify site plan requirements in the ordinance. The Commission discussed ordinance amendments at its meetings in November and December of 2020, as well as January 2021. They held a work session at the February 2021 meeting using the zoning map. At the March meeting, they requested the changes to be put in an ordinance form for discussion in May. At the May meeting, the commission formally initiated the ordinance change. The commission held a public hearing on June 30th, 2021. One citizen spoke to ask about the process, but did not express an opinion. The commission voted 6-0 to recommend amendments to town council, and tonight town council is requested to consider adopting the ordinance as recommended for approval by the planning commission.
All right, so do we have a motion on the proposed zoning ordinance changes?
I make a motion that we adopt the ordinance as recommended for approval by the planning commission.
Second. All right, any
Because that is
discussion?
that is what they recommended. That is what they recommended.
From the planning commission, I'm guessing you guys were going to have questions about the open air market thing. I figured there'd be some concerns about that, but we did it over a few planning commission meetings, and it came about from, what was her name, Ms. Ray? Sybil Ray she had asked us about 8 months ago, I think. You know what I'm talking, you guys know what I'm talking about. Right, and she was doing it, didn't know it was a code violation, had a good turnout apparently, and wanted to do it right. So we looked into it and tried to craft something, because there was really nothing, I think, in the regs that addressed it at all. So we figured if we do it, this put enough restrictions on the time, the place, that, you got to pick up when you're done, so it's not like a permanent open air market. I think it's maybe misleading that it says open air market like it would be there permanently. It's not. At least how we wrote it up. That,
Also, as a point of information, just to clarify, the open air market would also be permitted in the M1 district. That's
right.
Just make sure you understand that as part of the motion.
So it's a lot to kind of bite off and chew right now. I get it. So if you guys wanted to think about it, I get it. But it took us a few turns at the planning commission to get this crafted, and through Mary and Will as far as writing up the language that would go in the regs. Now, also, we're going to have new zoning regs in a year and a half anyway. So this is kind of a temporary fix anyways. So
I called Bart and I said, we're redoing the zoning. Why are we doing this now?
Trying to be accommodating to
yeah,
the
Ms.
citizens.
Ray, she got it going. I hate to say it was one person, but yeah, she did.
So the 20 feet by 20 feet, does that take into the condition of parking, or is that the size of the stall, whatever, for the fence?
Let me ask Mary.
So the 20 by 20 is to calculate how many vendors could be on site. Once you figure out how many could be on site, they can calculate how many spaces are needed for people coming to visit those vendors. So it's kind of, you can get 10 or you can get 100, but all the parking has to be on there with the 10 or the 100, so that we don't create a traffic problem. That's really what it's trying to do, is keep the parking on site where there's not on-street parking currently.
Because a lot of the churches have across the street.
And keep in mind, this would be a conditional use permit, so this would be coming through Planning Commission and you as well for conditions. If you have a concern about the number, or if there's a traffic issue that's not resolved with the site plan, then you could control that with a condition. Or reduce the number of vendors, so it gives you leeway.
So how is parking figured? Is it so many spaces per vendor?
Yes. There's no set calculation for that, just to prove that there's an adequate ratio of who would be coming. That we didn't set in that for every vendor space you get 2 parking spaces, or you're required to have whatever, just to calculate if there are 10 vendors, can that hold enough people on the site without a hard number to it.
Was there any discussion in the planning commission about how did?
Yes. There was a lot of discussion.
I'm trying to figure
remember
it out.
exactly what, I'm a little fuzzy right now.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Me too.
But as far as actually connecting the parking to the number of vendors, there was not.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. This is something we were trying to accommodate, and feel free if we think we can tighten it up. But we did work on it for a little while.
So every time she wants to do something, I have to find it, Mary, she's got to come up here with a conditional use to have a yard sale.
No, not every time. Her application would say what days of the year she was going to do it. Like she was going to be open on Saturdays and Sundays for, September, whatever it is she wants to do, May to
They have to
October.
pre-plan.
Yes.
Right.
They have to tell us the dates and the hours of the operation as part of that. Now, if they vary from that, they could do less, but they couldn't do more.
So they're gonna have to come back every year?
No.
Okay.
It would run with the land, just
Okay.
keep in mind that too. So again, this is not permanent, this is not there all the time.
We can change it if it doesn't work out. We
Right.
can do the regs.
That's right. So this is going to be a trial run for some of the new, this is really the only new use you've seen. All the others are
Right.
existing.
That's how I kind of looked at it too, a trial run for, let's see, and if we don't like it, when we do the final draft of the new regs, we
We
can
want flea markets, but I want to make it real restrictive either, you know?
Well, actually, the planning commission was fine with having some restrictions on it because they don't want these just popping up
Yeah.
everywhere. They don't want to take away. I think the intent was to have it, if there's already a parking lot, that's a great place for it, but don't clear land to have something that's going to be on a gravel lot that's going to look like a flea market all the time. That there should be some control of the appearance of these. So they're not flea markets, they're open air markets. That's the other.
I think every county do that.
Any other questions on the open air market, please? What about the amphitheater?
So the amphitheater is currently only allowed in the Planned Memorial Park District for D-Day, so we had another business that would like to have musical events on occasion with conditional use permit. So that would give them the availability to do that on 20-acre parcels, 20 acres and more.
the
So
Y,
B2,
right?
the YMCA would like to be able to have musical events there.
So when they have them at Liberty Lake, they don't have to get it too.
That was consideration as well, that this would apply to our property as well, that it could be something that we could have be an amphitheater and be legal.
Any questions on the amphitheater? Mini warehouses? Any questions on that?
They keep that involved.
So we're gonna require brick on all sides facing.
The facade, at least, I mean, that's what we did up by, American Way. It looks nice, and I think there was one that we voted on before where we didn't, and I think there was some, at least at the planning commission, some regret that maybe we should have made that a condition, because I don't believe the expense is that cost prohibitive. It's more of just a facade, too. It's not like you're saying the whole building's gotta be made of brick.
Right, only those that face in public right of ways.
Yeah, just so that, what's visible to traffic, and it's existing in other spots.
That just sets a standard where the people
These
can
are
expect that
popping
going
up.
in.
Crazy.
They're big money.
Amazon. People buying stuff.
Any other questions on the new warehouse? So these setbacks are more restrictive than what we had
On
in
the
mini
storage
warehouses?
facilities?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
It's going from 0
Right.
to having
Yeah,
setbacks,
yeah,
and
right.
B2
So
had
now-
no setbacks.
Okay, good, all right. Then section 4 talks about the towing issue.
Just clarifies that towing is ancillary to a garage so that there's no question.
That's like what we voted on before.
Yeah. And then site plan. So, next time we have a development like this, we're gonna have, so explain this a little more.
Yeah, so when we started drafting this ordinance, it was in response to a developer who felt that the project they brought before you did not need to have all of the elements, kind of what you heard this evening, is not everything is required up front for the additional cost. But what seems to be the hangup of those people who come in and don't have a surveyor or engineer, that is the greatest cost of getting a professional to prepare these reports. So what you saw, I'll give you an example for tonight, Croft Insurance, that survey was done because they needed a survey, but they drew on there where the building was gonna go. That was fine. We didn't split a hair on that, didn't meet a requirement of a site plan, which is what the ordinance requires now. This would give the zoning administrator the option to say that it doesn't have to be done by a surveyor or engineer. Most of the information that needs to be on a plan, if it comes in, what do you call it, a site plan, a minor plan, whatever you want to call it, a concept, is again there to help planning commission and you make a decision. Most of that is already publicly available. The topography is already out there on the county GIS website, water and sewer, we know where those are, turn on those layers. So the only expense at that point ends up being a surveyor or engineer. Once someone's already hired that, they've already put out the money for that.
And doesn't this, it's the larger the project,
Yes.
strict we are as far as the
Yes.
site plan. This is so, like I think the lady that was doing the medical tattooing or whatever.
Yes, she was in a house.
So make it easy for her.
The conditional use permit in
You know,
existing
she doesn't need to be
structure.
on the same level as the previous developer we just saw, which
Right.
should probably have something a little more to it, like a site.
This allows for the flexibility I believe you requested last year.
Right. It gives Mary more flexibility, I know that.
And then we also added a provision about what does it look like? Because I think that is a big concern, is if you know that there's going to be something you don't want to see, that gives you an opportunity to condition that. And that was what Planning Commission asked to see. And it's, again, it's a may provision, it's not a shall. So if I feel like this is something that you're going to want to know, what are you getting? We're going to ask for it up front, so we don't get them here and then find out, oh, no, go back and try again. We don't want to have people taking your time, their own time and expense.
The government loves to spend other people's money.
This one was not.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
The motion's been put out there, seconded.
I'm sorry. Roll call.
Mr. Johansson?
Aye.
Mr. Rush?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mr. Hartwick?
Aye.
Mayor Black?
Aye.
Motion carries with 7 ayes.
All right, Will, you want to say anything else?
No, thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to go into closed session real quick to talk about.
I'm going to Charlotte.
The attorney hire process.
I'm going to get there after midnight at this point.
J.C. McGivey. That was a classic.
Aye.
Okay. Be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Bedford hereby certifies that, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the council.
Second.
Okay. All right. Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mr. Hartwick?
Aye.
Mr. Johansson? Mr. Rush?
Aye.
Mayor Black?
Aye.
Motion carries with 7 ayes.
Meeting adjourned.